Have you ever thought about what skills do you actually need as a mixing and mastering engineer to make it in this industry? Meet Tony Jack the Bear Mance. He cut his teeth on the lacquers during the 90s in New York alongside Rick Essig. During his travels, he lodged at Bob Katz's house and received a first-hand masterclass on the art of mastering. And 18 years ago, he built deluxe mastering here in Melbourne, designed by legendary engineer and acoustician George Oxberger. We've been colleagues and friends for over a decade now, and given his knowledge, I wanted to explore and discuss how he sustained such a career and what skills attribute to that success. During this conversation, we dive into how we manage communications, customer service, build trust and earn referrals, the camaraderie within the mastering community, the power of mentorship, as well as repetition and skill development. This is a really great in-depth and contextualized conversation based around the practice of being in a studio. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Make sure to sign up to the newsletter down below. And now let's jump into it.
I'm joined by Tony Jack the Bear Mance, mastering engineer here in Melbourne. And backstory, the very first time which I engaged with his work was when I was learning about mastering. This is 13 years ago. I Google mastering studios in Melbourne. I see yours, and then it just becomes a North Star in my mind for what I have to do. This is 13 years ago. It's a long time. I've had a long relationship since. And the reason why I really wanted to chat to him is because I'm in a growth journey of my own with my studio. You've seen how much it's developed over time and all the different sort of tentacles to it now.
Yeah.
And I know you've had your own journey.
Yeah.
And I want to get behind what that's been like. It would be decades now. How long has the studio been open?
Well, in this building, we just clocked up our 18th anniversary here. But as far as a freelance, just working out on my own, I've been at it since 1991. But I will say, just on to what you were saying before, and this is something I think people just acknowledge that. I remember when you first came to me, and there's this really young, bright-eyed, enthusiastic, and I think at the time you approached me as quite often people do, and more so years ago than these days. Although it still happens. Anyway, people want to come and work here, essentially. Yeah. And I remember that you expressed this interest of wanting to, be mentored and to work out of here and every in my mind, I thought everything was good. And then you told me, but I got my own setup, and you'd already had invested in analog gear, and you effectively had your own space at home, and so. I would have had you in a heartbeat on any day of the week, but because I saw you'd already gone into moving into your own place, I thought at some stage or another, because also it was also evident that you were very entrepreneurial. You had a good knack with people. You had all those skills that you really can't necessarily teach. And while you would have been a fantastic asset here, I knew that inevitably you were going to go. And so I thought, you know what? I just let this. He's already got his own thing going. I would have been happy for you just to go and do your own thing and avail myself if you needed me, and it was a good move. I mean, it would have been better for me if I had you, even if it was just for a short period of time. But I think it worked out better for you that way, and I'm happy with that decision because I feel that was your destiny. You'd already in your own mind had you'd already started. You'd done the hardest parts. You had all your basic building blocks in place. So all you needed was just a little bit of encouragement and guidance, and the rest was going to take care of itself. And look at you.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
You're not just taking part anymore, Nick. You're taking over.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story, which even predates that.
Yeah.
Which I don't think you recall, but it's always stuck in my mind.
Okay.
2012 is as early as we came in contact.
Okay.
And
just refresh my memory.
No, I'm going to refresh your memory because it's very telling of the difference in maturity you might have experienced from me. Doing a bachelor, you're going to have vocational experience. You're going to get your hours in.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you said, come in, sit on the couch, have a day. At the time, it was an electronic record that was happening. We went down to A1 Bakery afterwards and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just concerned about getting my hours in.
Right.
And this is something that shits me now as a studio owner is getting the people wanting to come through to get the signature on the paper. And that's what that was like. That was in my peripheral. Like, that was my vision. It's like, okay, I'm going to get an internship here, get my hours up, get my degree, knock on. So that was the first time I had actually
Okay.
come in here and sat on this couch,
Okay.
which was a couple years, or probably 3 years predecessing
Yeah. You're
um,
coming in that
coming
next
in
time.
the
Yeah,
next
yeah.
time.
Oh, wow, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I can't so remember it.
No, that's
but,
okay, 'cause it was
I've
one time.
but thanks for reminding me. But look, you know what, mate? We all grow. We all
Yeah.
hopefully grow and emotionally mature. I'm a late bloomer in that department, so yeah, don't feel bad. Don't feel
No,
bad.
no, it was,
It all worked out well for you.
yeah, but it was, you have these experiences and in the moment, like you're young, you're trying to get your foot in the door, you're just trying to do anything.
Mm, mm.
But it's very like how babies progress as they get older. Like
Yep.
it's just me and my mum, and then it's just me, and then it's you start to, as you get older, think about other people outside your circle and empathize and whatnot. And
Yeah.
when you're sort of
Yeah.
in this sort of learning stage in the career, it's what can I do to serve me? How can I grow? And then afterwards, you bloom into a thing of how can I help others
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
whatnot. So it was
For
just sort
sure.
of telling of that, which was really funny. I'm curious though, because I wrote down a question here. Going in the studio, you've had a lot of people. Like you've had Adam in here, the other room. You've got people in. Um, what would have it looked like if I'd come on? I'm curious because that's just sort of like piquing my interest. What is that process of actually getting people working in your studio and
Well,
operating alongside you?
like everyone else that's come here, everyone operates as an independent, and so I think it would have been great. It would have been amazing, and it would have probably been great financially for me, just because you'd already were getting the work. So you would have basically been running your own thing out of here and being your own man, and you'd be responsible for all. You'd be responsible for all your clients. However, having said that, having other people in here also, when there was an overspill, I would be always happy to provide extra work just to sort of take a little bit of pressure off me. Look, it would have been wonderful. It would have been really great for both you and me. But I know it would have been short lived because, and while everybody here inevitably has gone off to do their own thing, that was different because even though while I kind of felt that was an inevitability, and I've always accepted that as that being a possibility and always been fine with it. The difference with you is that you had already had something set up beforehand, whereas everyone else hadn't. And then they built themselves up to a point they felt like, you know what, I could probably do better myself being out of here, which I respected. But for whatever period, if it went ahead, it would have been fabulous.
Yeah. So in terms of like, yeah, it would have been a lot of fun.
Oh, 100%.
I would think it would have been a lot of fun.
And also just because of your mindset too, Nick, we think similarly about a lot of things and you've got a great attitude. Like I said, you've got that, apart from the fact that you're very skilled and you've got a great ear but you're great with people. You're a great communicator. You listen. You understand service. All those things that make what I think really are the differentiating factor, especially in. It's always been that way, but more so now than ever with such a proliferation of engineers and studios and people got so much choice. That I think is if we can look at two equivalent choices, the person that's going to give more love to the client, by that I mean a little bit more care factor, are going to ask questions of the client, are going to avail themselves, are going to show genuine interest in them, that engineer is going to get the nod.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10,
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of studio choice, that you say that, from 2010 to 2016, I think Melbourne was turbulent because every producer who had an interface, some speakers, I was seeing websites pop up for mastering.
Sure.
Like they were like a.
Oh yeah, like going out of style. Yeah, yeah.
And as fast as they came in, they came out at the same
Yeah.
time. Do you think there were things that they were doing that were plain wrong, that put them in that position where they moved in the shop quick and they moved out?
I don't know. I don't know necessarily if I'd say anything wrong, but if anything, perhaps if we want to categorize as wrong, maybe a lot of those guys walked in thinking that was going to be an easy cash grab because they were. I think the intention was, let's provide a service as an adjunct to what we're offering in a package. So I believe a lot of them went into it with a good intention, and maybe they just realised that isn't as easy to do as what people think it is.
Yeah.
And so, and again, it's their why as to why they're getting involved. I mean, are you doing something because you generally love it, because you want to be a service, because you want to provide something of value, or are you doing it because you're seeing a quick buck? And you know, when you're trying to come into something as a relative newbie, even if you were established as a mixing engineer and you're not known as a mastering person, it's still going to take some time to build up a name as a mastering person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily guarantee that because you can mix a record, you can necessarily master one. Now, granted, you're an example of a good engineer that can master. You know, you're proof of that, and there's more and more people that are doing that successfully. But I think during that period that you talked about, again, I don't want to call it wrong, but if I was to try and have an educated guess as to why a lot of them dropped out as quick as they came in, they would probably be the reasons.
Yeah. One thing I observed, and I think you may have observed as well, mixing engineers or producers who are clients of ours who tried that on their own. You know, they're outliers. It's not a commonality, because they do see the bill for the mastering, and they come in before, they come in after, and we service them and try and take care of them to the 9th degree. And we do that successfully. And even then, they're still happy with what we've done. I think you observe something as like easy cash grab, a jump package, and this isn't making judgment, but there's a lot they don't see, which we do, not just technically, but like there's a whole sort of like previous coming into a session,
yeah.
which they don't observe and see,
Yeah.
even around the session or adjacent to it, in terms of like what we actually do in the studio outside of their session to make it all gel together.
100%.
And I'm curious, like, let's say you take out of the equation you sitting at the desk mastering records, what do you think are the probably most critical parts to keeping the lights on and moving?
In context of what
The studio itself,
the job, what critical in what way? You're talking about the work. What's critical in the work, or
you've got 12 hours in a day.
Yep.
Okay, let's say 6 of them are mastering records. Let's take away those 6.
Yep.
And what tasks are you doing outside of the mastering itself to keep the lights on here?
Oh, okay. Social media is obviously one of the things that's is a daily thing. Answering emails, phone calls, obviously the inquiries that come in that require, and I think that's the make or break part. It's how you respond and interact with that initial inquiry. So there's the communication process happening beforehand. So the time involved in that, and also the time involved after the fact as well. So you want to check in with your client to make sure if they haven't got back to you first, obviously, with their feedback, it's good to time in following up there. So in relation to the studio, that's really where the work, everything else. That's really it. I don't think there's anything else that other than cleaning. I mean, I clean my toilets. It's I think that you can't be too proud not to look after your own place. So, there's the time in vacuuming the floors and mopping the floors and wiping the benches and washing dishes and all that kind of stuff. But all that takes time. So, within that time frame that you're talking about, it all adds up. Yeah. It all fills it up.
Yeah. So I'd say probably comms is like the core, because that's like the conduit between the studio and the outside world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Curious what your take. I hate comms, not because I don't like talking to people, because I have this saying, I tell my wife, because she tries to call me, and I'm like, while I'm at the studio, I don't answer. I don't want to be a receptionist for myself, so I set aside an hour and a half each morning to deal with it.
Yep.
And then I'm off.
Yeah. I'm okay with calls.
Okay.
If I'm on a job, and if I'm unattended, which is most of the time, I'll usually have a look and see who it is. If it's a client who, because I think it's good to be available. If I'm in an attended session, however,
that's different.
Then all bets are off.
Yeah.
But if I'm working unattended and I'm not sort of in the middle, I'm not right in the middle of, again, if I'm in the middle of trying to make a critical decision and the phone rings, I'll just let it go. But I'll still take a look at it to see who it is, and depending on who it is, then I'll make it, make that call. So again, I just make a judgment call depending on the time. And again, I think people like it when you're available, especially if they're having problems, because for the most part, they're going to call you. They're going to call you because there's an anxiety around something. Oh, what format do we need for Spotify? Is this going to be okay? Is that going to be okay? So, particularly for people, particularly for people that are new or they just want to check in with you. So, I think for me, availing myself at an appropriate time is something that I do. Having said that, I think there's something to be said about your approach as well, and that is, you're setting some boundaries and you're enforcing those boundaries. And look, ultimately, Nick, you know what? I don't think there's a right or wrong way.
Yeah.
I think it's a very individual thing, and what works for you. And if your system works for you and allows you to do what you need to do, then that is right. I just happen to do it that way. Others may have something in between.
Yeah, I'm just curious because like when a mastering studio is at scale, the comms coming in and out are wild. Like as in that's why I make that observation, and I think that's good of you. And I think I've observed something there. And the thing I've observed is, and even pre to this, I've observed it is it's typically around anxiety. And it's funny, if they don't get on the phone to you, you've probably got an email straight after before.
Yep.
Or
a text.
Yeah. So I've had that before. I think for me to implement something is at the end of comms, maybe have an FAQ for myself. Like just listen to this, because knowing those calls, they're always the same thing. Which file, or how do I submit this to you, this, that, the other, and having an accessible fact, not something like in the footnotes of the web page, but like something they can access in the signature of an email every time. Can alleviate that, because I don't want to not talk to clients for the sake of not talking to them. I want to not talk to them so when I am engaged with them, they've got my undivided attention. If they schedule a call with me, like we're sitting here right now, there's nothing in between us. Like we are here and doing it. My brain doesn't function where I can split tasks. If I'm on something, if I have to split off from that, my brain will be thinking about the other thing the whole time. And I find that that's me. I wouldn't want that to happen to me, so I can't do that to my clients. So that's where my brain comes into that. Leads are important. You talk about social media and you talk about the leads, so that those comms coming in. What's the most critical part of that initial interaction for you? Whether it's an email call, like what is that main core component for yourself?
I think getting back as quick as possible.
Yeah. Okay.
I think getting back, and let's just say a reasonable time frame. I'm just going to throw an arbitrary number: 12 hours.
Oh wow, that is the pace of the industry. If anybody's wondering, like that is literally how quick you can make or lose a job.
Yeah. Because people will. What I find invariably happens, particularly with people that haven't worked with you before, inquiring for the first time. Usually, it happens to be, there's this carpet bombing, and they'll just get everywhere. Not just locally, but everywhere. And usually it's the first that'll come back. Look, the amount of times I get told, Nick, I'm serious, where people say, "Oh shit, we didn't expect to get back so quick," and so straight away the client feels special because they got Now, we're not in control as to what the criteria are in terms of how they decide. They all have their different things that they look for. But when you get back, I find that when I get back to the client within that 12-hour time frame, invariably it puts me in a better position to at least be able to, and I don't say pitch myself, but to have that interaction where I can then start the process of vetting them and finding out more about them and what they require and explaining my process, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that helps.
Yeah, no, that's really funny and really cool. Only because I find it laughable, not in a disrespectful way, but it just happens where somebody reaches out. I'm a little bit slower than 12 hours, even though I know I need to be way faster. But I just.
But if you're busy, operating, you're busy. You got to be realistic.
I just find it funny. I get back. We wanted to work with you, but so and so got back to us.
Right.
Like, fair enough. Like I respect that. I completely do. Tough shit for me, but Yeah, it's just a commonality trait.
Yeah.
That's something to navigate, which I think if you can be fast and quick is good. And
At
that's
the very least, to acknowledge them. You know,
Yeah.
just so at least you've acknowledged them, and
I
you
should.
started the process.
I know.
You know, because other than that, they don't know what. Again, you don't know what their thoughts are. Are they thinking they're too busy?
Yeah.
They don't. He doesn't think we're good enough for him. I don't know. Again,
Yeah,
I can't.
I can't speak on their behalf. Yeah, I get it.
But what I do know is that when you do get back within a certain time period, even if it's just, as I said, just to at least acknowledge them, then that's a start. That at least you're still in the running. You know what I mean? The other people may get back to them, they can talk to them, but the fact that they've had that interaction, the starting point, then because they're going to wait, they will wait for you because now they're going to if they're in this position of we're going to go through A B C D E, and they've got four ready, and you're the fifth person, they're still going to wait for you. They're still going to wait for that because you may be the winning ticket, right? And they're going to hold out. They'll hold out, but you've got to at least let them know that you've acknowledged them.
Yeah, I'm being very open to this conversation, and you know, it's in blanket terms, it's a shortfall of mine, and not by any intention of wrongdoing, just by the nature of how I currently operate. That's cool. So let's circle through to that. So we're talking about at the moment the conduits that point towards the business growing and being successful there, which is great. So leads was that main conduit from the outside world in. What actually, I won't try and make this verbose. What generates leads?
Well, for me, it's predominantly word of mouth. That's the overwhelming majority. I would say, even people that email me who haven't worked with me before, typically they've arrived because they've either heard a record that I've worked on, or they've spoken to someone who has worked with me, and so they've been referred. It's not very often now that I will get a random from a social media post or someone who's just gone on Google. I would say, without hyperbole, over 90% of the leads are word of mouth.
Okay.
Repeat clients, or if they're new, word of mouth.
Okay. Now
or something they've heard.
Something they've heard
that they really like, and they feel that's in their wheelhouse.
Okay. And that's really a lot of people who operate in, because predominantly now we have to accept that, or we don't. I'm not saying you have to accept this, but I think as a general consensus, the space in which we operate as working with digital media is online. Like that is the conduit to our business.
Absolutely.
Online. Most people who run online businesses, service-based and product-based, would say that's probably the one thing you don't have control of to an extent, that you don't have control of, and it would be like building your business on a house of cards for word of mouth. Now, I'll preface that with saying my business is exactly the same. It's all word of mouth. What aspects of word of mouth do you feel you have autonomy and control over in terms of how that operates for your business?
The only control I got is what I do. Well, if it's attended, how I'm treating the client from start to finish, or if it's unattended, the only control I have is, again, the quality of service, the follow-up, the work I do. That's all I've in control. I have beyond that, once it's out the door, it's out of my hands. So I can't have any control over things from that point. It all comes down to what I'm doing at the time, being attended or unattended, and the level of service I give from the moment I get that first initial call or email into the actual session itself, and then after the fact, once the job goes out the door, whether it's how do I handle if there's a revision required, how I handle that, how quickly I handle that, how again just how courteous I am with the client in understanding their needs and not getting my back up because my ego somewhat got bruised because all of a sudden they're saying, oh, could it be a bit this or a bit that. Just swallow it, accept it, smile on your face and just do it. So, and even sometimes it can even be not even doing a job. And I'll give you an example. And this has been a great. This is something that's really helped me. But this has been something that's built over a long period of time. So, as an example, someone comes to me, they want something done. I go through my due diligence process, and for whatever reason, either A, the mixers aren't up to scratch, and by that I mean they're not at a level where I feel I can deliver value for the money that they're going to spend. Okay, and if it's not there, then it's like, okay, what can I do to help? To provide some feedback. So, now, if it's something that's fairly smallish, as an example, vocals a bit too loud, bass is a bit too loud, kick drum needs to come. If it's just little small things, now if it sounds like it's a bit more involved, because I'm not a mix engineer and I can't listen to the trees like a lot of mix engineers can, and give more analytical feedback, then I'm going to start referring them to people who are mix engineers who I know and trust, depending on the genre, to help them with that. Now, that may mean that I don't get the gig because now all of a sudden they've got no budget because they either have to outsource the mixing or they're going to pay someone to provide some consulting, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
It may now, but that's not a bad thing because what's happened many times in the past, Nick, where I've had situations like that, or I've referred them to someone else because the budget wasn't there, and then 2-3 years later,
Yeah.
hey, I don't know if you remember me, but we came to you and we weren't able to do it for whatever reason, but now we got a budget. Now we got a better mix.
Yeah.
We were so happy that you put us onto so and so and so and so. We really want to work with you.
Yep.
Right.
No,
Well, this is all this building trust, right?
Yeah.
Which builds the word of mouth, Nick. Right.
Yeah.
Once you started earning the trust with people, then the word of mouth takes care of itself.
Yeah. And I think there's a few things there that you say. You circled around ego in the service, the QC. I think a sort of struggle, especially for people starting out, is there is a need to put food on the table, and that's paired with needing to provide above and beyond. And when money's involved, it can conflict values, and depending on which side of the scale you're on. If you've got a lot of jobs coming in, it can be easy to say no. If you haven't got much, for some people, it can be very hard to say that. And then you've got your ego circling around with that because, we love our work and we always want to do the best for people. Sure. So that pulls us up against the back. So building trust. The reason why I circle round to that is because it's almost like not the ultimate sacrifice, but that sort of sacrifice of passing through a job to go, hey, this isn't ready now. The best interest is for so-and-so to look at it. Even sometimes this has happened where people have sent me something that they've had mastered and they're not happy with. And it's another mastering engineer. And they're like, can you master it? And I'll listen to it. And sometimes the master actually sounds great. And all they need is somebody to listen to them and their concerns and give them the feedback they need.
Yep.
And the mastering engineer might do another revision, knock it out of the park. Everybody's happy and over the, and that sort of trust to not just be like, this is an easy cash grab, builds it.
Oh, for sure. And further to that, I'd also add that when that situation has come, because I know it's happened. I'd be naive to think that I haven't been that person either. But when someone does hit me up and say, "Look, we're not sure, we're unhappy, or what have you," my first question is, "Have you spoken to the engineer in question? Have you actually taken it up with them?" Now, there have been 1 or 2 occasions where, for whatever reason, the communication broke down. It was irretrievable for whatever reason, but I always make sure to ask because I'd like to think that if I was that engineer that whose work was taken to another guy, they'd do the same courtesy. I know it doesn't always happen that way, and that's okay. I got to live with my own conscience and look at myself in the mirror. But I think it's important that in those scenarios, if they do happen, that you make sure that you go through those steps to ensure that that client has gone back to the engineer, addressed their concerns, and either A, had it revised to their satisfaction, or at least know that it's run, if that has run its course. So, but again, these sort of things build trust as well, right? Because when clients understand that you don't see them just with a dollar sign over their head, right? And it's not that you don't care about whether you get the work or not. It's about them you showing them that you care and that you're invested and that you want to do the right thing. You just want to do the right thing. So by doing the right thing, whether it means referring them elsewhere or guiding them through those processes or whatever it is, these are things that people remember. And it may take a long time for them to remember, but they do remember. Yeah. They do.
And also I think that's something that speaks to that is, and I know you and both of us can acknowledge and appreciate it, the mastering community as a whole is, it's almost, there's a good sense of camaraderie amongst people. I find this is what I've found.
Yeah.
Amongst mastering engineers I know.
Look,
maybe you've had your own experiences, but
I would say there's more. I'd say there's more for me personally. I'd say there's more camaraderie outside of the local scene.
Oh, okay. I would say globally, as in the
global.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I find greater sense of camaraderie on the globe. Anything outside anything outside of the city. You've been an exception. For whatever reason, and again, this is not a criticism of anyone else, but for whatever reason, they're really. I've had very little to no communication with anybody here locally, but interstate, internationally,
you can pick up the phone, you can go into their studio. It's a great hang, and there's a respect there.
100%, absolutely.
I've even I won't say names, but I've even had engineers. I mean, I won't use the word competition, but run in very close circles with the same labels, the same records. They'll jump on the phone to me to ask me questions, even though there's sort of like, oh, is he mastering this record? Am I mastering this?
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because, and this is maybe, it can be a shame when it's not there, is the fact that a rising tide lifts all the ships. And when one person does well in the mastering community, in terms of they've got their thing going, they're doing well for people, that keeps a good word of mouth and a good perspective of the craft and the profession amongst everybody who engages in it as customers. And I think if, let's say, somebody sent you a master, they got somewhere done well, and you badmouthed them, you'd only make them feel worse about the process of having them record mastered than good. So,
and it reflects badly on you as well, because the minute you badmouth somebody, they're going to go and say, "Oh, guess what? Nick said, boom, 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 boom." And it's not healthy. It's just not healthy. It doesn't help. No. And like you said, and you don't want to make them feel worse than what they already are feeling. You want to help them. So by saying, "Oh yeah, you guys got really taken for a ride" or whatever, it doesn't help, and also it doesn't help that relationship either between you and them, because you're making them feel worse. Why would you do that?
You want to lift everybody up, and I just think,
sure.
Yeah, well, I think from your travels as well. When you were younger, you went through New York. I'm pretty sure. I know Howie's assistant, so when I was in LA, I got to go to his studio, and it was a brief interaction, but it's so beautiful the way people operate internationally, and they probably have their own intricacies and quirks, but that openness to just be like,
I think also because they're all so busy and got so much work, they don't see anyone as a threat. They know where they sit in the food chain, and I don't know whether there's this inverse relationship between, I found, the guys who are higher up the food chain or had the bigger reputations, more often than not, you tended to be the most humble, the most laid back, the most available, the most giving. And again, I think because they're confident in themselves, they know who they are, they got no point to prove. They got so much work, it doesn't matter, And invariably, a lot of those guys were mentored well and were helped along the way and understand what it was like, when they were new and up and coming, and what it was like for people to come along and help them out. And it doesn't take much. It's just usually just the fact that you're availing yourself and helping them believe in themselves and answering their questions. And look, I got so many examples of that, but I'm just going to give you one which really, really, a couple really stick out. So one of them was Bob Katz, where Bob Katz didn't open a bar of soap, but I stayed at his house in Orlando for 3 days, where I had an intense masterclass of mastering, for 3 days.
He's hyper passionate.
He didn't know me for bar of soap. I just hit him up on the internet. Hey, I'm just this kid from Melbourne.
Yeah.
I've set up my own business here. I've been away, but I've just come back. Another one's Dave Collins. Now, Dave was a guy I saw on the internet, and I thought, Dave.
What's his studio name again? I can't.
Dave Collins Mastering.
Oh, Dave. Is he the one who runs Aria, or is that somebody else?
No.
Okay. I didn't mean to
that's okay. No. Dave went through A&M and Mark Yusson, and started his own thing quite a few years ago. But again, I just thought, oh shit, he's not going to want to talk to me. But I rang him, and sure enough, he took the call, spoke to me, answered my questions, and Dave has been a great mentor of mine for many years. So and probably my greatest mentor, Rick Essig, Frankfurt Wayne, which is where I learned to cut a lacquer. Again, same thing. He put me up in his home as well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I've been the beneficiary of so much kindness from people, and it left such an impression upon me, and that's why now I mentor, and I'm so passionate about mentoring, because it was so instrumental in my development, as an engineer and as a human being, and so that's why mentorship has now become an even bigger part of what I do and what I offer. It's just so important, man. Never underestimate how powerful a kind word can be to an up and comer. Just the fact that you just take the time out of your day, 5 minutes, just to acknowledge them, and they feel like you're actually invested in them, or be for 5 minutes, Nick, but just for that time being, you are the person, because so often we get rejected, we get knocked back. Nothing personal to us, but we do. And the default that most young people, as mine was, they're not going to want to talk to me. They don't care about me. Why would they? Who am I? All the limiting stuff that you tell yourself that we default to. And then all of a sudden someone who you put up on a pedestal, or you have a very high opinion of, now all of a sudden is giving you the time of day. That's powerful, Nick.
Yeah.
That is so powerful. So, you never underestimate it. And so now that's why I always say, look, I'm just paying this stuff forward. But so Bob, Dave, Rick, and look, Brad Blackwood, he's another guy I'm going to throw in there as well. Yeah. Brad was always making himself available, wanting to help you. And man, even just through my travels, George Marino, God bless his soul.
Yep.
Just, he made his client, I'll tell you what, I was there at one point, the first time I went to see him, and he made his client wait while he was there, and he said, "No, I'll answer all your questions."
Yeah.
Blew my fucking mind,
Yeah.
So if guys like that, Bob Ludwig, retired now, same sort of thing. Bob was always so kind, so generous, so willing to, listen to what I'd done, give me some input, all that stuff, man. You just don't forget that kind of stuff, Nick. You just don't.
And I think that's telling of their care for the craft itself. As much as they care for you as the individual reaching out to them, and they respect that communication. I've seen it with Bobcats online. I haven't met him in person, but whenever he's passionate about something and he knows he can make a contribution to the community at a wider part, he's in there. He's in there straight away.
100%.
And again, like I said, it's about nurturing that craft, that community around it, which is interesting because through that, that proliferation of communicating channels, because again, online, and I feel really bad for anybody coming out who's lived inside their computer, they feel like silos.
Yeah.
Like it's like, this is me doing my thing, I might watch a YouTube video, and then I get that information, and then I'm back inside my thing, and the idea of breaking out is difficult, and so much so to the point where, so both times I went to NAM in the last 3-4 years, I'll go there and meet a bunch of people recognize you, you communicate, you engage with some brands, this, that, the other. The thing that kills me the most, and it's not a judgment on the person, it's just me feeling so sad and disappointed because I'm like, I wish I could have met this person, is when I get an Instagram DM saying, hey, I saw you out. I wish I could have said hello.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm here. You could have just said hello, and it would have been the best hang and everything. But I can't. Now you sent me a message. I got another 1,000 messages. I want to reply back and be as kind as I can, but I can't give you that
what we could have had that interaction.
And that kills me. And the reason why I say that is because the most haphazard interaction ever. So I'm about to fly out the day before. So I go down to the Starbucks near Disneyland. Got my bags in the hotel lobby so I can get going. And there's another music professional who runs their sort of like online courses and stuff called Adam Ivy. He has a pretty big following in and amongst independent musicians and stuff. He's there with his wife on holiday. He wasn't even there for the Nan show.
Right.
He's walking in Starbucks. Adam, I recognise. Connected.
Yeah.
Best connection to make ever.
Yeah.
Because we've jumped on a few calls, we've communicated ideas and stuff. And if I'd have just let him pass through and hit him up in his Instagram messages.
Yeah. Exactly. Yep. Precisely.
And that's why I'm sort of like, I think, that sort of willingness.
Yeah, to want to help and avail yourself. Yeah.
Is wild. Wild for like just that. Yeah. That's cool. That's really cool. Sorry, man, I'm just absorbing everything in. I really.
Yeah, that's cool. That's all right. All good. I'm here for you, mate.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Okay. Now, so we're talking about leads, conduits of communication, the way we interact. Something most people's North Star, they're jumping into this game, is they've got jobs coming in, maybe it's busy, maybe it's quiet. Their North Star is to get a big record, to get something like that their teeth are in, that people recognise. We've been fortunate to have records that have done that and people see, and then I'm not necessarily saying that's a be-all and end-all as a conduit in for more leads, but you've had your own experience with having records that, again, sort of teeth in. Is there any one that comes to mind that's sort of like given you a little bit of a platform with your career? And if so, was it all it was cracked up to be? Did it make or break, or in any sense of the word?
Okay, so first of all, let's just go back to the point about getting that first big hit, right? I remember for many years I was, getting jobs and doing things, and everything was going okay. I mean, I was working, and in fact, things are great, but nothing really, became a hit, as in really hit the radio or charted or gold or anything like that. And I remember talking about this to Howie Weinberg, and having a bit of a whinge to him. And he said to me, just be patient. Eventually you'll get your home run. But more importantly, what he said, and he's right, he said, but you're never going to have control over that. You just don't. You want to, you're looking for the next big record. But you know what? With the exception of Guy Sebastian, right? Because that was an Australian Idol. Now that record had already been mastered by Steve Smart, but I was called in. It was just one of those situations where it was time critical, and there was an extra track to be added on the album. Now I knew. Now that's the only time I could tell you that I worked on a record that I knew, because it already had pre-sold 6 times platinum.
Yeah.
Okay. You're not. Even if you're going to work with a huge artist, I mean, especially today where the sales are different, it's all a different world. But any of the records out there that are on my wall that are gold or platinum or whatever, I wouldn't have guessed a million years that they would have gone.
Okay.
Right? Very rarely have I ever listened to something and I thought, oh, this is going to be a hit. There is one time I will say, and that was working for doing that, and I can't think of the name of the artist, but that Flaunted track, way back in the day. My friend, I cannot believe I can't remember the artist, and that is disgraceful.
I think he worked on a record.
Yeah,
as
but
well,
it was Ivan Goff and Grant Smiley. Okay, so anyway, so we're working on this track, and I remember when I first heard it in the studio, I said to Ivan, "This is a monster." Now, mind you, it took 6 to 7 months before it actually gained traction. But I there's something in my gut that said this is going to go really well. Yeah. The amount of records I've worked on, Nick, where I've thought to myself, and I said, "Self, this is just going to fly like went nowhere."
Yeah.
And then I've worked on records that not that they weren't good, but it never occurred to me that they're going to be hits. So you don't have control over what's going to be a big record. Now, having said that, let's just say you're working on a record, it gets traction all of a sudden, and this is what Howard was telling me. He said, the world will open up for you once you get one because it's about perception.
Yeah.
Okay, so you go from being an unknown to someone who now has done this particular record, right? And that people know that they've heard, and it brings this level of this credibility. Now, you weren't necessarily a better engineer now than you were 6 months ago when you did that other track. You maybe have improved slightly, but you're generally speaking, you're an engineer with that same level of competency. But because now you're associated with this record or these records, all of a sudden people think differently about you. All of a sudden you'll get more calls. The floodgates will start to open because it's a perception game, Nick. It's a perception game.
It's
right?
it's really interesting, that sort of like
Paradigm.
and alignment, because it's almost like that sound on that record is accessible now through you, which doesn't matter whether that's true or not.
But that's a perception.
That's the perception, and that's really funny because I've had my own experience with that, where for a particular style of music, the artist ended up getting Grammy nominated, and then it's not a style I often work with, but I love working with it. And then all these other artists who recognise that credit move through, and so it does work in a good way. How?
Hang on, can I say that?
Yeah,
Because
you
you asked me before about how I feel. So my experience once that's happened, okay.
Yep.
It was amazing, especially the first one. It was amazing and it was wonderful. But here's the thing. Once it happens, that joy is short-lived. And this is where it's really important, where if you are in this business because you are chasing hit records and gold and stuff and fame and fortune and validation, get out. Just get out. You are going to be disappointed over and over again because the likelihood, of everything being a hit or being successful, it's not. It's there's a funnel, and very few records, get to quote unquote make it in this day and age. So this is why it's important that you do this because you love it and because you want to serve your clients and because it's fun and it's a challenge and all these kind of things, right? So if you're continually chasing, it's like this high that never gets satisfied. And so for me, yes, it was wonderful and it's amazing. And I love the fact that I've got some stuff like that on the wall and it has been helpful, but it doesn't make me who I am as a person. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't put all of my self-worth and validation into those things. Those things are beautiful bonuses that come along the way. They're lovely embellishments and they do help. But as an example, when I got my very first double platinum singles for a band called The Neighborhood, American band, indie band. Okay, so this is a single. It sold 2 million copies, not because of me, but nonetheless, I was associated with the record. They were kind enough to send me a plaque, and I got it, and I was so excited. And it was amazing. But you know what? I actually cleaned half an hour after I got it. I went and cleaned the toilet. It's fleeting.
Yeah.
And that takes nothing away from it, but it's temporary, and you should just take it that way, enjoy it for what it is, and move on to the next one.
Yeah, because I agree with that. And when you look at the span of a career, these are micro moments, especially when you go 10, 20, 30 years, they become micro moments. And what we spoke about before, so the relationships you form with people, the trust you build up in people, is a much more macro factor which you can build up over time, that trust in the community and whatnot. I wrote down something here because, like you said, it's perception, but also there's the perception of practitioners. So there's this sort of like two sort of brains, the sides of the brain, we'll say. There's the logical business one, which goes, if this happens, then what? So if this record goes well, then what? Like what Howie said, it'll open up that floodgate. But then you've got the creative side, which operationally, there are records which have 100 plays on them, which are the best joy to work on. So it's really because the logical side is
keep the lights on,
get more leads in,
Yeah.
make the business grow.
Yeah.
The creative side is, why do I engage with this? What keeps it passionate? That intersection is really important. And I think the only, not pushback necessarily, but to sort of steer what I like, my input to that would to be, say, you have to have that balance between, yes, you have to be creatively involved, you have to be passionate about the projects, but
You still have to have that logical side of when something like this happens.
how does the market interact with it? You might not have control over it, but let's say it does happen.
I'd offer that, and maybe because I'm older and been doing it for longer, I guess maybe when I was younger I used to think that way. But as I've gotten older and learned to kind of relax and let go of outcomes,
Yeah.
I just said, you know what, these are things. I've got no control over it. You know, what'll happen if, or what if it doesn't? More often than not, it won't. So the constant is, to your point, the right side. Just to work from that point of passion, to work from that point of being a service, and let everything else take care of itself. Because, like I said, these are micro things. These are, for most of us, aren't going to be a weekly thing where we're going to get a gold record. You know.
Yeah.
Because we're not at that echelon, okay? So what's remaining then? If we're going to keep thinking about, oh well, what'll happen if and how the market interact, I find that is thinking that really doesn't help, because again, it's in the sphere of, this is out of my control. So I'm overthinking something that I have no bearing on. I have no influence in any way, shape, or form. I've only got influence. I've only got. I've only going to really control things when I'm doing the work, when I'm dealing with the client, and the rest will take care of itself, however it's meant to work.
Yeah. I think there's an intersection with what you're
and
saying.
And this is not saying that you're wrong. As I said, I think I've come to this point because just through time and experience, and I guess I got a different approach. And when I was younger, and you know, there's something about youth that invariably brings that level of whether it's high drive, more aggression, or more. You know, I've got a point to prove. Then I can understand that line of thinking. So again, I just see it as what you're saying, what you're thinking, to me makes a lot of sense, particularly as someone who is still young and has their best years ahead of them, as opposed to someone like myself who's had a career and is looking at not at the necessarily the end, but again, I've evolved and now I'm thinking about different things, and what I want to achieve is
It's more
different.
consolidating your efforts in a different direction.
You know, and transitioning as well, because, you know, 5 years from now, it's unlikely I'll be mastering records. Not because I don't want to, but it's unlikely. But I'll be. But I can see myself as a mentor. I can see myself doing events. I can see myself doing that. But I can see you in 5 years, and in fact, you'll be doing bigger records, and you'll because it's your turn, mate. You know, it's like I'm turn 61 next month. I've had a good fucking go of it, mate. You know, I don't want to sort of linger on and keep grasping onto something like a punch drunk boxer. You know what I mean? Like, dude, you've had your day, you've had your time. Be grateful for it. Now it's time for you and your generation to become prime time and to have their name up in lights, right? It's your, you know. So going back to the point of what that line of thinking makes perfect sense to me. And it's, for lack of a better term, right way of thinking, you know, and I get it. I get it. So I don't see this pushback at all. I see it as I completely understand that line of thinking, and it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's funny because all the things you've said, because I've been taking copious notes just so I can guide my own thoughts in this conversation. You go purely focus on the creativity, and I see things that you do which are within your
Control on the macro level.
like somebody sends you a lead or somebody inquires, 12 hours, you're going to hit them back straight away. You attending to those calls, that all these relationship, trust building things, actions you do have control over. And I think any individual operating has control and autonomy over. And something to touch on there is not something we've discussed, but mentally, especially when like shit's going on, like as in studio's busy, you're getting through a lot of sessions, you're getting through a lot of work. Like it is a grit, it is a grind. and then another email comes in, or you've got a revision on the side and another lead comes in, or something might not be going well in one space,
And there's another opportunity here.
and you can't, unfortunately, and it happens because we're human beings, give it the attention and love that we would want to give it and that it deserves. Those are the times where I feel like it's important to highlight or take a step back, especially for people out there who are sort of starting out. They get an inquiry in, and it's like, okay, there's this inquiry coming in, and they got shit going on, and they just throw a number out. It's like the inquiry comes in, how much for mastering? And you're like, cool, $1,000. I'm free next week.
And that's it. And that's all the love they give it. And in
Hindsight, it's complete opposite to their genuine feel, but that happens. So I think that's
the reason why I iterate on that
anecdote there is because if you can take a step back to recognize the importance of that conduit of communication between your studio and the outside world, it is something you have control over to actually grow a career that's tangible, quantifiable. How many people you speak with, how well do you speak with them, what are those interactions?
Yep.
And again, that to me is being a bit cheeky here to go. That is the logical side of the brain in a sense on the scale of a business. So yeah, I just thought I'd mention that because I think I wanted to give you credit where credit is due through this discussion and the things that we've discussed, like just to make that connection there. Cool. And that's a lot. Did you have anything to ask or add to the conversation in general?
No, mate. Well, I'm here to answer your questions. So, you know, I'm like I said, I'm here for you. You very kindly offered to invite me on this and to have this chat, which is, you know, again, this is like a conversation that you and I would just have anyway.
Yeah.
Or anyone that I'll be mentoring. You know, this is very typical of the sort of conversations that I had. So I have no questions, only hopefully some answers, or at least some kind of insights that, you know, for those who are interested, they can take them on board or not.
Well, put it this way. I came in with the intention of talking to you to have an understanding of your studio operation from where I saw it in the fledgling of my career as an outside observer to where you've carried it through over time, and also my experiences and your experiences, where there's overlap, where there's difference. I'm really happy to have had you on board because I genuinely feel like we navigated many of the contemporary things which of relevance to mixing engineers, producers, people in the industry in a very healthy way. I do invite anybody who's watched this to hit up Tony.
They're welcome to. You know, I'm always happy to answer people if they want. If they want to hit me up for whatever reason, I'm always happy to.
What I was going to ask is where can they find you? Is there anything that you're doing at the moment that you're particularly proud of, or would hope that people could interact with for their benefit?
Well, look, they can find me on my I'm more responsive on Facebook. So Tony Jack Mance is my personal page. I know I can't accept any more friends, but I can, you know, people can hit me up on Messenger easily. So that's probably where I'm most responsive. Mastering music, mastering _ music _ mastering. Mastering music,
up on the screen.
Mastering music, mastering life is my Instagram, and there's also Mastering Music, Mastering Life Facebook page, and my YouTube channel, which has been going for a while, but I've just sort of started to reboot. Thanks to you and your advice, by the way, of offering me some good insight to get things up and running. And I must say, I really appreciate your input and your help on that, my friend. I should acknowledge that, because without it, you've actually inspired me to get in there and get it going. And again, as you said to me today, it's actually paying some dividends. I don't know how to look at the metrics. You're the smart guy here. But again, I appreciate that. But nonetheless, YouTube, they can check that. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything particularly so I'm proud of, Nick. I'm just proud that I've managed to and been fortunate and blessed that I've been able to carve a career for myself. I think it's a tougher time now to get started. It's good in the sense that you can now buy, you got access, availability, and affordability of all the tools If you don't have a fantastic, and I'm speaking in a more in a mastering context here, even if you don't have a tremendous room and monitors, you could do good work with headphones. I tried. I really desperately tried to do it. I couldn't. We'll just put that down to operator error and lack of skill on my behalf, because it's evident and clear that people are, because I've got clients who do it, and I've heard people that master. It can be done. Whatever anyone else may say, it's all good to be purist and go, oh, but you need this and oh, you need that. You don't need anything. You just need to be capable, and you need to be able to be resourceful, not just have the resources. But nonetheless, I'm kind of digressing a bit. But I think now where it's good now for people is accessibility, affordability, availability, the internet to learn things, tutorials, being able to hit people up. You know, in order for me to get a hold of Bob Ludwig at MasterDisc back in 1978, I had to write a letter. It would take 5 days to get there. Whereas now, so many engineers now are online. For the most part, that there's no gatekeeper between them. They usually are the people who are looking after their own social media accounts. So you've got, you know, just on this bloody thing,
Yeah.
right?
Very
And
accessible.
the world is literally your oyster. So, you know, it is a good time, but it is tough in terms of budgets, in terms of what people can afford, what people are prepared to spend. Yeah, but you know what? I still believe that if you go into this with a genuine passion for your craft, for wanting to make a contribution, for wanting to be of service to people, you can still enjoy it. You can still enjoy it. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thanks for coming on. I do appreciate your time.
That's all right, my friend. And can I just finish with one little anecdote,
Yeah,
which
of
I
course.
wanted to share with your audience, okay? And this is going back to the whole thing about gold and platinum and stuff. And I just want to share a beautiful story that my mentor, or one of my main mentors, Peter Sage, shared with me, and I really like to share it with people. And that is that, and this is in relation to the why you do what you do, and that is, most of us are familiar with the concept of greyhound racing, right? Greyhounds running around a track chasing a rabbit, okay? And you have to ask yourself, how many times do the greyhounds, barring a technical problem, get the rabbit? They don't. They never do. And why is that? Because it's set up that way, right? And that's not to say that life and mastering is a conspiracy. But you know, I've never heard a greyhound who went week in, week out to chase this rabbit, never catching it ever, even though that's their focus. They just want to get this bloody rabbit, and they never do. But never will a greyhound say, fuck this, I'm not going back next week because I never catch that fucking rabbit. Never in the history of the world has a greyhound ever said that. And the reason they don't, mate, is because they're born to run. They're happy in the process. It's all about the thrill of the chase. It's all about the process. So, you know, us as creatives, us as engineers, right? Let's not think about what we can gain in terms of validation and approval and all sorts of stuff. It's a process. You know, the making it is in the fact that you're in there doing it. You made a decision, whereas, you know, Johnny Punchclock over there has not hadn't the gumption to say, I'm going to have a go at this. Whereas you had enough courage to go, you know what, I'm going to give it a go, and I'm going to get in there, and then you have fun and you enjoy it. And the more you do something, the better you get at it. Repetition is the mother of skill. Eventually people will do your bidding for you. You just don't know where it's going to go. But unless you're driven by passion, unless you're driven by something that's bigger than you won't be a success. And the success is in the making it. It is in the process of doing it while you're in the game. So I just wanted to add that at the end, because, you know, when that was shared with me, I thought that was a very, very powerful story. And so I don't want people to be discouraged because they're either not making lots of money, or because they're not getting gold and platinum records, or 3 billion streams on Spotify. I want them to be excited by the fact that they have enough gumption to at least have a go, and by doing something that they love and they enjoy, and it brings them fulfillment, and to be focused there.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks for leaving us with that.
That's right, my friend.
No worries. All right. Well, thank you again.
Mate, it was a pleasure.